Welcome to Decoding Retirement. Hi, I'm your host, Bob Powell, and today we're going to go behind the headlines with Melinda Caughill, the co-founder of I-65. Melinda, welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you here. You just gave a speech at Schwab Impact where you discussed Medicare's dirty little secrets, 5 dirty little secrets, and I'd like to go through them one by one. The first of which you mentioned in your speech was, don't rely on the information you get when you call the Social Security Administration for Medicare advice.
Right. I have some really heartbreaking stories. And in my speech, I talked about how I have a client. Actually, I had 2 clients, but the husband just recently passed. So he had terminal cancer. With the terminal cancer diagnosis, the wife and the husband at the time called up Social Security, asked the Social Security agent, hey, we have paid COBRA from our previous employer until October. They called in January and they said, what do we need to do about Medicare? The Social Security agent said, well, you've got the paid COBRA coverage, do Part A, but then you can delay Part B until October, right before November 1st, then get enrolled in Medicare. So they didn't get enrolled in Medicare Part B, and it's really, really unfortunate that they got this guidance, because the truth is, when you have COBRA coverage after the age of 65, COBRA coverage is secondary to Medicare, regardless of whether you get enrolled in Medicare or not. So David racked up, I kid you not, he racked up between $800,000 and $1 million worth of bills over the next 10 months that he and Julia, his wife, have no coverage for because of the guidance of the Social Security agent. When they went to the Social Security office to get it rectified, because she could actually prove that she got bad guidance, when they went to get it rectified, the Social Security office said, well, I'm so sorry, we'd love to help you, but we don't know who Ronald is. We don't know who this employee was who helped you, so you're on your own.
So the advice that you give is, like, if you're talking to someone from Medicare or the SSA, is to document everything, get their names, the date, the time that you talked to, what they said?
Yes, absolutely, because in truth, Julia did that. And Julia was having a hard time getting the whole situation rectified. So even with full documentation, it can be difficult, if not impossible, to get Social Security to make things right. But if you don't have any documentation at all, you got no case.
Yeah. All right, so number 2 is the Medicare insurance salesperson may not be acting in your best interest. Tell us more about that.
So Medicare, there are essentially 2 different, what we call Medicare paths to choose from when you get fully enrolled in Medicare for the first time. You can choose original Medicare with a Medigap policy and a Part D drug plan, or you can choose a Medicare Advantage plan. When you choose a Medicare path, though, you need to know there are differences to this coverage. The sad thing is that Medicare insurance agents, you may not know this, but they are paid greatly more amounts of money to sell you a Medicare Advantage plan than a Medigap policy. So it's very difficult. They make 40% more on the initial commission selling Medicare Advantage than Medigap. You need to know this. Always know where the money is going and make sure that the guidance you're getting is in your best interest.
Yeah, so you have a couple tips on how to qualify whether you're dealing with someone who is honest and reputable and will work in your best interest? Yeah.
Yes, I absolutely do. So the first question is to ask the agent. You may not know this, but the agent does not have to sell all types of Medicare coverage. They could just sell Medicare Advantage plans. If that's the case, guess what you're going to be sold? You're going to be sold a Medicare Advantage plan. If they sell both types, okay. Then the second question is you want to ask, what is the percentage of Medicare Advantage policies you sell versus Medigap policies? If they sell 90% Medicare Advantage plan, guess what they're going to sell you? The last thing you want to know is how many companies, how many plans do you sell? Because there are captive agents. Captive agents represent one company and whatever plans that one company sells. That's it. Guess what? You are going to be sold. So you definitely want to make sure that you ask these questions and ultimately monitor the conversation. If the conversation is all about free extra benefits and $0 in monthly premiums rather than actually checking your doctor network or your medications or telling you the costs of the coverage, you might want to be leery of that agent.
And it's so interesting because, a lot of times people equate low premium with no cost, but that's not the case at all.
Nope.
Not at all.
5 words, $0 in monthly premiums is not one word free.
Yeah.
So definitely
But it's so interesting because we now live in a world where 30 million plus Medicare beneficiaries are in Medicare Advantage plans, and that number is going to grow even larger over time. So
Absolutely.
a lot of people are being sold plans that perhaps aren't in their best interest. You talked also about Medicare enrollment and how complicated it can be, but you boiled it down into 6 steps. Walk us through that.
Yep. Medicare enrollment is not all about picking specific Medicare insurance policies like United Healthcare, Humana, Aetna. It's not. Medicare enrollment is 6 steps. The first step of Medicare enrollment is timing, meaning do you get enrolled in Medicare at age 65 or do you delay? It is all based on your unique needs. The next step of Medicare enrollment, when you determine that you do need to get enrolled in Medicare, the next step of Medicare enrollment is choosing the type of Medicare coverage that's best for you. We call it the path because very often it's a one-way path. There is no turning around and going back. Then once you choose timing and path, then you go ahead and choose specific plans, United Healthcare, Humana, Aetna. Then you get enrolled in Medicare through Social Security. Then you get enrolled in any additional coverages. And congratulations, you'll be enrolled, but not
but there's
done.
a big but.
Yeah, but not done.
Yeah.
Because the 6th step of Medicare enrollment is reviewing your coverage each and every year for the rest of your life. No autopilot.
Yeah. I often think that it's one of the cruelest things that we do to our older adults in our country is to ask them to review their plan and make decisions about whether this is the right plan for them or whether they need to change. And we know that inertia plays a big role in this, and that the large majority of people don't change their plans, even though networks change, drug formularies change.
Yes.
Everything changes.
Everything about your coverage can change from year to year while still maintaining the same plan name. It's crazy. It is just, it's sad.
So, it begs the question when you have to go through the annual election period each and every year that you do need assistance. We'll talk more about that. You talked about relying on an insurance salesman. Do you rule out using insurance salesmen as people who might be able to help you? Or
No,
if
not
you
at
go
all.
through those tips that you offered, at least then you can qualify someone that's might be able to help you?
Yes, be sure to ask those questions. And there are good insurance agents out there. There are also bad ones. And unfortunately, they don't wear hats like cowboy hats, right? White hats for the good ones, black hats for the bad ones. So you need to ask those questions. And if you ask those questions and you find a good one, by all means, work with them.
Yeah.
So.
I want to go back to the first dirty little secret that you mentioned when you called Social Security. Others have done studies around this topic where among the things that they reference is the notion that these folks aren't necessarily allowed to give you advice. They're allowed to educate you, but not tell you what to do. So any thoughts about that?
So I really don't think Social Security is really living up to its mission statement right now. Social Security's primary mission is providing guidance on Social Security or to help with Social Security. Medicare is the secondary mission. And regardless of whether you want to talk about Medicare or Social Security, when you call the general phone number, you get who's ever up next.
Right.
So I know it sounds crazy and it sort of breaks our minds, but you can't necessarily trust the guidance or what the Social Security agent is saying to you.
Right.
You have to double check it, which makes things even worse and more complicated. But we've had enough cases now where people have gotten flat out wrong information that it is worthy to check, double check, or better yet, if at first you don't succeed, try again. Hang up, call again. Are you getting the same answer? Hang up, call one more time. If you get the same answer 3 times, chances are good that's good information. But you're going to get three different answers.
So clear this up for me. Medicare does have a separate 800 number, but you're being connected to a Social Security.
No, you are being connected to a Medicare agent.
Okay.
But Social Security runs all of the enrollments, premiums, penalties of Medicare. So Medicare is administered by the Social Security Administration. So technically there is a division, but when you ultimately get enrolled, you're getting enrolled through Social Security.
The fourth dirty little secret is this notion, and we kind of touched on it, that failing to review your coverage is like giving the insurance company a blank check.
Right. Very well said. I
All
think
right.
I even said
You've
that.
said that. Quote. That's a direct quote. Yes.
I know. So that's why I think it's very well said.
Do my job as a journalist.
There
yeah.
we go. So yes, because when you may not have any drug changes, you may not have any health changes from year to year, but just because you don't have any health or drug changes, the plan can change premiums, deductibles, out-of-pocket costs, provider networks, pharmacy networks, all while keeping the same plan name. So we have seen this time and time again where people will say, oh, my coverage worked really well for me this year. I'm not going to waste my time trying to review the coverage for next year. And then next year comes and their medication that turns out to be $9,000 a month retail price is no longer covered. What? Well, you should have reviewed your coverage. Just because you didn't have any changes, the plans can have huge changes anyway.
Yeah.
Got to do it.
So very quickly, we have about a minute left here, but a lot of folks receive their annual notice of change, and they learn that their Medicare Advantage plan is no longer available. It's being terminated.
Yes, that's a biggie.
Yeah, so what are they to do?
Oh, so I like to say that there is a lot of good news wrapped up in maybe a little bit of bad news. So the good news is when you are dropped by your Medicare Advantage plan, when you are dropped, you have a Medicare do-over from the start. You can choose a different Medicare Advantage plan, but you can also choose original Medicare and a Medigap policy without going through medical underwriting. You have a do-over from scratch. So again, if you liked your plan, it kind of stinks that you got dropped, but you can choose whatever you want. Even if you have cancer, like active cancer or heart attacks, you can get a Medigap policy. That's huge.
That's pretty good. Melinda, we have to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about the dirty little secrets and a couple other topics that are on my mind.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to Decoding Retirement. I'm talking to Melinda Caughill, the co-founder of I-65. Melinda, I want to pick up where we left off. You were mentioning that people who have their Medicare Advantage plan terminated have the ability to go into a Medigap plan. It was my understanding at one time that you could go into the Medigap plan, but they might charge you a higher premium, but that's not true, apparently.
No, it's all about whether you are the dump-or the dumpee. Okay. So if you are dumped.
I've been on both ends, by the way.
Yeah. So when you are dumped by your Medicare Advantage plan, you have a guaranteed issue right to get a Medigap policy, meaning you are guaranteed to be issued a Medigap policy at the lowest policy cost of anybody because they cannot ask you questions about your health. You may have stage 4 cancer. They can't ask you. You have a guaranteed issue right. You are going to get the best policy premium available.
Well, that's pretty good. In your speech today, you also mentioned a little trick of the trade that I was unaware of, which is if you're on Medicare Advantage and you have a pre-existing condition and you want to go on Medigap, you could move out of your state and get a do-over?
Yep.
Tell me more about that.
I know, it's a big one. So
Yeah.
we call it the nuclear option.
Yeah.
My co-founder and I dubbed it that because it's a big deal, right? Moving is a big deal, and you really do have to move out of the plan's service area. Very often that means moving out of state. But if you have stage 3, stage 4 cancer, and you're not getting the care you need when you need it, what are you going to do? So you just pack up, move to another state. You have a Medicare do-over again. It is a big deal. We call it the nuclear option because it's a big deal, but it can also be life-changing.
Yeah. So that reminds me of another thing that people ask when they write to us, which is, I plan to retire and then do a lot of traveling overseas. Should I get a Medicare Advantage plan or original with Medigap?
So I kind of feel like that's a horse apiece. Some Medicare, a horse apiece.
Is that like a Wisconsin
I
saying?
think Yadderhay. Yeah, and I'll make you tater tot casserole.
I have a cheese hat. Don't worry, I do.
So essentially, it doesn't really matter a great deal. Some Medicare Advantage plans will cover emergency benefits outside of the country. A Medigap policy, Plan G, Plan N, and 2 others actually include foreign travel emergency benefits. Again, but the trick is it's emergency benefits. So if we're talking about you traveling to Italy, and please don't ever have this happen to you, but let's say, I know, right? Okay. This is not a premonition. So let's say heart hurts and turns out you go to the emergency room, we need to do open heart surgery. That's not emergency room. That's a surgery with a hospital admission. That's not what we're talking about. So inevitably, whether you have a Medicare Advantage plan with emergency benefits outside of the country or a Medigap policy with emergency benefits outside of the country, get trip insurance with medical benefits. And potentially the most important benefit to have, I think, is extraction evacuation benefits, because if your cruise ship loses power or your country goes to war, you want out of Dodge.
Yeah.
So that's not a Wisconsin term. No. But you want out. The trip insurance with extraction and evacuation benefits will get you out.
All right. Let me go back to the dirty little secrets. The Inflation Reduction Act presumably capped drug expense, out-of-pocket drug expenses at what, $2,000 per year?
Yep.
But there's a but.
There's a but.
All right.
But the big but is that the $2,000 spending limit only applies when the medications are covered by your Part D drug plan. If your medications are not covered by your Part D drug plan next year, no $2,000 spending limit applies. You will pay the full retail price for that medication, whether that medication is $200 a month or $20,000 a month. That's yours to pay. And remember, plans that covered your medication this year may not be covering that medication next year. They can change what's called drug formularies. Drug formularies are the list of medications that the plan covers.
All right. So in that case, there's what, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 typically? So
those are the classifications of the drugs, and you pay different amounts depending on how your drugs are classified. So tier 1 typically are preferred generics. Preferred generics are very often $0 in copays. Tier 2 drugs are non-preferred generics, $5 copays. But then come tier 3, which are preferred brand names, we start getting into a co-insurance. So instead of having a flat amount, you will pay 20% of the retail cost of the medication. This is where you start getting insights into how much these drugs actually cost, because you pay 20%. If the price of the drug goes up, you pay more for the cost of the drug. So your copay can change in the year because you are paying a percentage of the retail cost of the drug.
And what about where you go to get your drugs? What pharmacy you use matters as well.
Yes, there's a huge difference in cost between some pharmacies. So don't assume that Walgreens is the cheapest or that mail order is the cheapest. Walgreens sometimes is the cheapest, mail order sometimes is the cheapest, but it all depends on your medications and the plan that you're on. A small independent pharmacy may save you $700 a year next year. I mean, it all depends. You've got to check. Never, ever, ever assume.
It's my favorite thing. It all depends.
I know. I'm sorry. And that's actually the worst, right?
It's fine. But so as you're talking, I'm thinking, okay, I signed up for Medicare Advantage. By the time this airs, open enrollment season will be over. But if you're in a Medicare Advantage plan, you get another do-over in January to March 31. You could change your plan, but only one time.
Right.
So if you find out that the drug that you have isn't covered, it's outside the $2,000 limit, et cetera, you could change if you're in a MA Part D plan, right? Medicare Advantage Part.
Right. Now, if you changed your Medicare Advantage policy during open enrollment, you can't do it again. So pick one, right? If you happen to be changing Medicare Advantage to Medicare Advantage, pick which open enrollment period you want to use very carefully. But Medicare Advantage plans have two open enrollment periods, October 15th through December 7th, which is Medicare's open enrollment period. That's where people with Part D drug plans can change those. And then January 1st through March 31st is only for Medicare Advantage.
Yeah. So the other thing that you talked about was hinted at this notion of Wegovy and Ozempic being covered under Medicare, and there's been a lot of change there.
Oh, there's been a lot of change, but there's also been a lot that's stayed the same. So technically, last March 2024, Wegovy got FDA approval for use other than just weight loss, which is huge because Medicare can't cover medications for weight loss. But with Wegovy's approval of basically lowering the risk of heart attack or stroke for those with cardiovascular disease who are also obese or overweight. That's what they were approved for. Opening the door for Part D drug plans to basically cover Wegovy. Yeah. They're not, basically. Basically, the rule of thumb is they're not. No standalone Part D drug plan for next year, 2025, covers Wegovy. And there you can find a handful of Medicare Advantage plans nationwide that will cover Wegovy.
What about Ozempic?
Ozempic's different. So Ozempic is very commonly covered because its use is related to diabetes. So if you have a need based on being a diabetic to use Ozempic, life is good.
Medicare will cover you.
There's a ton of plans that cover Ozempic. There's a ton of plans that cover Mounjaro. So potentially, if you are looking at Wegovy and you're not finding coverage, see if you can't switch to something like Ozempic or Mounjaro.
All right. So very quickly, you mentioned some ways that people can get help: SHIP, insurance agents, Medicare plan finder. Anything else?
I like to think that people like us are really good.
Yes.
But we have to charge fees. So no, there's a lot of different. So you can look for insurance agents. Again, always do the qualification. There is Medicare.gov has a plan finder tool that you can use. The trick is to make sure that you aren't just comparing things on just a monthly premium. Look at the whole cost picture. SHIP, often staffed by volunteers. Their services vary greatly depending on where you are.
Often found at senior centers, but they're booked from like the moment the place opens till it closes.
Yeah, it all depends. So pick your poison. What works for you? And pharmacies, you can also get pharmacies to compare costs, but again, they're only going to cover the costs. They'll show you the costs at their pharmacies. So.
All right, Melinda, I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with our viewers and listeners. It's great.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And now it's time for a segment that we call Ask Bob, where we answer a reader's question. So the reader's question goes like this: can I roll my 457 retirement plan into an IRA? And the answer is this: yes, you can generally roll over funds from a 457B retirement plan into an IRA. However, there are some important details and rules to be aware of. With a governmental 457B plan, you can roll over funds from a governmental 457B plan into a traditional IRA. But with a non-governmental 457B plan, there are some restrictions. Typically, you can only roll over funds from a non-governmental 457B plan into another non-governmental 457B plan. If you've got questions about personal finance and retirement, I'm here to help. You can email me at askbob@yahooinc.com, and we'll do our best to answer your question in a future episode. So that's it for this week's episode of Decoding Retirement. We hope we provided you with some actionable advice to help you better plan or live in retirement. And don't forget, for the latest retirement news and expert analysis, visit yahoofinance.com.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.
Are you ready to master the markets and, dare I say, become a better leader in the process? Well, Yahoo Finance has you covered with our new full suite of original podcast content. Whether you're a seasoned investor or you're just starting your financial journey, we offer invaluable market insights and strategies to help boost your portfolio, build your wealth, and make you a successful investor. Now let's make some money and get a lot smarter.
I've done Yahoo Finance forever. This is a spectacular spot.
Welcome to Stocks in Translation. I'm your host, Jared Blickery.
Hello, world. I'm Ross Mack.
Hi, I'm Bob Powell, and welcome to Decoding Retirement.
Welcome to Living Not So Fabulously.
Hey, it's me, Tiffany the Budgetista, your favorite financial educator. Welcome to Capital Gains World for a few days and everything has changed.
From Wall Street to Main Street to the C-Suite, we are your daily lifeline because behind every great investor is Yahoo Finance. Join us on yahoofinance.com, the Yahoo Finance app, or wherever you get your podcasts.